I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the leadership journey of our guest and what unique traits bring them to be the leader they are today. Who knows what we're going to discover together, so I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. And I have to say, I'm delighted to be welcomed by Tom Willis, who's a former classroom teacher, believes in the power of lifelong learning. Well, Tom, you are in great company, because I say every day is a school day, and the day I stop learning, I may as well not bother.
Amen.
It's so lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us all the way from the US.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I gave you a little bit of a taster there in terms of Tom being a former classroom teacher, but he loves helping others to move beyond their self-limiting beliefs so they can reach their God-given potential. What a lovely way to put it. You know, I often talk about helping clients to achieve their leadership potential. Just another way of saying it. So, and we're in great company today, folks. Tom's from a PricewaterhouseCoopers background and Intel, so a real genius mind, I think, believe going on there. So no pressure, Tom. It's all good. And so much more to say about Tom, but I'm going to hold the introduction there because for those of you that have heard or listened to Game of Leadership before, you know the format in that we are lucky enough to have Tom with us for the next 3 episodes, where we're going to hear all about his leadership journey today. And then next week, we'll get his take on game and leadership. And then the following week, we will get his pivotal moments that make Tom exactly who he is and bring him to exactly where he is today. So a huge welcome, Tom. Thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah, thanks again, Paul. It's fun to talk about this stuff, and so I'm glad to have the opportunity to do so, especially across the pond.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got all sorts of exciting things to hear about from you, because I will give a little teaser now in that you're releasing a book in a few months' time. So I know in the course of our conversation over today and the next couple of episodes, we're going to be able to dig into some of that as well, because there's a very exciting topic called engagement involved in that, and I am all about engagement of my team and beyond. So yes, we've got plenty of subject matter to chat back and forward. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent.
All right, with that then, I guess the question is, we'd love to hear all about your leadership journey, Tom. How did you kind of turn up at this moment in time and be about to publish a book?
Well, that's a great question, Paula. And the short answer is I just tried to listen to where I was supposed to go. You know, faith is sort of everything to me, and I work hard to try to keep it centered. I don't always do that effectively, but I try to be open to where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do. And because my career path makes very little sense, which you may find out about here shortly. So that's the short answer, is just trying to listen to where am I called to, what am I supposed to be doing. The longer answer goes way back to when I was just a young kid growing up in Michigan here, and always loved playing sports, loved being competitive, loved games, maybe too competitive. I was known to not be such a good sport early on in my life. And early on means through my 20s and 30s. But I've learned over time that, you know, leadership really is a powerful force and can make such a difference in other people's lives. And so I've really come to appreciate the value of leading and the value of shaping cultures, because that's really what our work is all about, is working with superintendents of schools and organizational CEOs to help them create exceptional cultures where people can thrive and come to work and do their best and bring their best selves and unpack that unlimited potential that you talked about.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea, Tom. The idea of creating a culture where people can thrive together instead of rubbing each other up the wrong way, and then nobody gets anything that they're hoping for. Never mind the team achieving anything. Never mind the wider organisation achieving anything. And I've certainly been part of a culture that is uncomfortable to be in, if you like, at the time. You know, you can tell when it's not going well and that it feels uncomfortable. So what led you to getting interested in the culture piece?
Yeah, probably lots of things. I was lucky to have a great parents, very strong family, two older brothers who I always admired, and even in high school, I just found myself drawn to leadership type positions all through college and beyond. When I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, I'll never forget, they asked me to be the team leader. And I was not the strongest programmer. I was definitely not the strongest mind on the team, but clearly they saw something in me when it comes to leadership that I probably didn't really see in myself. And that was a pivotal moment. And it's an important lesson for all of us that, great leaders see potential in somebody that they don't even see in themselves. And if you think about all of our best teachers, the teachers that really stand out from elementary school or middle school or high school or college, it's those teachers, those professors who really saw great potential in us. And I think that's the same for leaders. Effective leaders do that for others. And so from there, I actually didn't particularly love that job. And long story short, I found myself over in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Africa, with my best friend, and I was helping him. He was running a school over there for a couple of years, and it was one of, I think, 3 high schools in the entire city of a few million people. So it gives you a sense for how few students got to go to high school in the first place. And this high school was nothing special, frankly, and the sort of the terms that we would think about. A pretty basic building, pretty basic setup. The grass or the soccer field was all dirt, and yet these kids brought a level of excitement and passion to what they did every day, just like kids anywhere else in the world. And I'll never forget, because it was a really defining moment for me that, kids are kids. Doesn't matter where they are. Doesn't matter how much money they have or don't have. That we all have different levels of gifts that were given, and different parents and different circumstances. But at the end of the day, that same sort of youthfulness exists all around the world. And it really excited me to come back to the States and to start teaching. And really, that one thing led to another. And I kind of climbed the ladder, if you will, and took on different jobs, from IT to becoming the chief operations officer to eventually becoming the CEO and superintendent of our school district in Detroit, Michigan. And so just got great opportunities along the way from some wonderful people, from wonderful leaders that believed in me and saw the potential in me. And so every time I got an opportunity, I said yes. And even though most of the time I didn't really know what I was doing, I just figured I'd figure it out as I went along. And so fast forward 15 years, I was working with the school system in Detroit. And about 7 years ago, I ventured off to do what I'm doing now, which is helping other school superintendents and CEOs create exceptional cultures. So we've been doing that for about 7 years now, and just having tremendous success. And it's just a great joy to be able to help people, like me, who were maybe CEOs but didn't really know what they were doing. Or maybe they're a CEO that's been at it for a long time and they just felt like they've plateaued, and we can help them break through that next level. Or a brand new person that just looking to bring a new vision to life for their organization. So that's the great fun that we have with teams right now.
Oh, there's so much in there to unpick, Tom. Loving this already. Yeah, you talked about belief. You haven't used this word, but in there I sense a lot of courage to go for what you believe in and how you see yourself being able to help. That belief from others in you and that need to bring that into our own leadership in how we support others. The team that I'm working in at the moment, I believe in them, I trust them, all these great words that help create that that environment for them to thrive in, going back to that culture piece. You kind of set the tone, don't you, for how your team get to show up together. It's fantastic and very powerful. So I love that idea of the fact that you've also been there in that role as CEO and superintendent, so you know the kind of challenges they're facing. You've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, probably, and when they're bringing these things to you, you're able to say, do you know what, actually this is going to be okay, or do you know what, you need to do this to help support this. But also very much that kind of coaching approach where you're saying, okay, so you tell me, what do you think's going to work? You know your people best, and then you can help that sort of bringing all the jigsaw pieces together, as I kind of like to look at it sometimes. And I remember years ago, I used to work in hotels. It's a very long time ago now, and I was in a more of an admin position then. So I was PA to the general manager of the Hilton flagship hotel in London here in the UK. And so that was a very sort of salubrious position, if you like, in terms of the position that I held in the hotel and, in the hotels around London and so on. And I remember one of the team on concierge saying to me one day, well, what do you know? You've never done this job. Oh, it was such a funny moment, because I'd worked my way up in back of house and doing front of house jobs and what have you, and then just decided to move into the admin so that I wouldn't have to do the evenings and weekends anymore. But he didn't know that I had that background, just made this sweeping assumption. And I said, well, actually, I do know exactly what you're going through, because, and that was it. It changed the relationship moving forwards. So never judge a book by its cover, hey? But it was a funny moment, because when you've been in that, it does bring a lovely dimension to the support that you're giving and the passion that comes with it as well, because you really want to help and feel that you can help because you've been in that situation.
Yeah, it definitely is an advantage for sure, because you can relate not in theory but in reality. And there's a lot of folks out there that do work like this. A lot of people call us executive coaches, although we kind of think of it a little bit bigger than that. But a lot of times they don't have that practical background, they don't have that experience, and it is something that's a great advantage to bring to the table. And at the same time, we're all human. We have our own podcast called Culture Eats Everything. And it's a play on the Peter Drucker quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is definitely true. But we think it's bigger than that. We think culture eats everything. It is the ultimate competitive advantage. And in that, we talk to CEOs, we talk to superintendents, and our whole goal is really to help people see these leaders as just human beings. They weren't born with some sort of CEO gene. They weren't born with superintendent DNA. They're just human beings who likely worked hard and had the courage to take advantage of situations and push themselves outside their comfort zones. But other than that, they're human just like the rest of us. And it's possible for truly anybody that wants to become a leader. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication, but it's very much a possibility for any of us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I am a strong believer that we've got everything we need within us to achieve whatever it is that we see as our version of success, or whatever our goals are, and so on. So I think that's a really lovely way to put it. It's so interesting seeing people develop that, you all have worked with along your journey, I've worked with along mine, where they come to you and they don't really believe it's possible, and yet something changes and it's almost like something clicks into place. You can almost see it going on in the brain, as they suddenly have that belief. That's making me think of the Polar Express film. Do you know the film with Tom Hanks, and he clicks believe into the ticket? I mean, it's just such a lovely moment where the child realizes, well, actually, yeah, I can believe. And the little girl who gets the one that says lead and becomes leader, because she's going to grow up to be a leader later on. And I know they're really simple messages, but they mean a lot. And I think we all have those. You mentioned pivotal moment earlier, in our lives where we suddenly realize, actually, I can do this. And I almost wish that I could have told myself that in my 20s, because it takes time and experience for you to reassure yourself that you're making the right choices, doing the right things, being the person that you would want to show up as, and another quote. God, they're all coming thick and fast today. What was it? The Water Babies. Do as you would be done by as you would. Is that right? Do you know? Yeah, you're nodding. That's good.
No, definitely not my specialty.
Not my specialty, but I just remember that from the Water Babies book as a child, the storybook, and I think just being mindful of others and how you'd like to be treated very much plays into the way that I treat and support others. I'd much rather lift them up and we rise up together than be the person that treads on them to get myself up there. That's just, that's not for me at all. And people that want to do that can go off over there and do that themselves. Thank you very much. So I think we're definitely on the same crib sheet here.
Yeah. A lot of times those sorts of cultures, speaking of culture, are really based in fear. They're based in, I've got to win in order, somebody else has to lose in order for me to win. And I just haven't found that to be the case when you create a productive and effective culture where the real problem is inside of us most of the time. We think about, a lot of times people come and say, how do I get more confidence? And we'll say, well, you don't go work on confidence directly. You have to have situations pop up and actually feel some level of fear. Now, it may be quite small, it may be quite large, it may be unconscious to you, but we humans all have a immediate reaction to things, and the first reaction is typically based in some sort of fear, and it's in those exact moments where you muster the courage and you go do it anyway. And when you go and do something like that, you realize, oh, I just did it. Maybe I didn't do it perfectly, but I did do it. And that's where the confidence comes from. And the more opportunities you take like that, the more courage you muster, the more confidence you're going to build. And so it's sort of counterintuitive, because so many people get stuck and they don't build confidence, even though they want to, because they're kind of going at it in the wrong way, and thinking that they can go to kind of turn the dial up on confidence. But really, you got to notice when you're hesitating and when you're delaying or when you're procrastinating. And it's in those moments where it's time to lean in and push forward.
Yeah, that idea that confidence, we've got the confidence within us. It's just that, some of those words we've already used, bravery, courage, to let it out and try it out for ourselves almost, is the where the experiences come in along the way. I often talk about them like a crucible moment where your strengths come out and you start to shine as you come out the other side, because you somehow find the strength and the confidence within you to get yourself through these challenges that we all face in our lives at different times. And I talk about that with purpose. When people say, well, how can you tell me what my purpose is? I'm like, it's not that at all. You've always had your purpose within you. I'm just going to help you connect with it and understand it, and then use it to help you lead from your purpose moving forwards. Because then once you've unlocked that, you can't help but let it permeate into everything you're doing, and then you're passing that on to your team. You start to think about, what's the mission and purpose of the organization I'm working for? How are we aligned? It changes all sorts. This is so in tune with what you're talking about in terms of the culture, because all of these things are intertwined, aren't they? In that, you can't have, great focus, create great focus, great purpose, then giving the opportunity for people to thrive within that starts to create that bigger piece around the culture, and bringing great people into that who all have that growth mindset versus that fixed mindset. There's so many things in here we could talk about.
Yes. And that's a great book, by the way. Mindset. If you're doubting that people can grow and learn, the doctor does a great job of dispelling that myth that we all have infinite possibility. We can, in fact, learn all sorts of new and different things. I mean, it's for me, it's funny because as an engineer through college, I like to talk last. I was pretty introverted. Getting up in front of large groups of people and leading them like I do now, it would have terrified me 15 years ago. But because I went to work on it, it just shows that, any of us can learn anything if we just put our minds to it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, there's so many things that, I personally, and I've seen family, friends, people at work take that. It's almost that leap of faith, isn't it? That, again, that belief, that courage, that bravery to put themselves out there and go for it, even though they've not done something before. I always, I had a great experience years ago in supporting the London Olympic Games in 2012, and working with the team GB and helping support them in their sort of road to the Olympics, in project managing the preparation camp with a most phenomenal team. Had I ever project managed a prep camp before? No, I hadn't, but I thought, jump in, both feet first. You're a great project manager. How are you going to work this out? This is what we want to achieve. Let's work backwards. And you somehow find that courage. You somehow find that confidence in you as you start to build whatever it is that you're building. So, there'll be people that are listening today that have got some awesome stories themselves where they've been able to give themselves that opportunity. But it sometimes takes reflecting afterwards to recognize those things in yourself. I remember a while ago now saying, I've never got a good story to tell. Oh, well, I seem to have found my voice from somewhere. I always seem to be telling a story about something or other. So I'm making a connection here and there. And it just takes a bit of belief in yourself to get in, a bit of practice and a bit of, that worked, and tweaking it so it's even better next time, and all of that. So, people have got it within them.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there's some listeners out there right now who, may aspire to be a leader, may aspire to be the CEO. And yet there's a voice inside their head saying, nope, not you. You can't do that. Who do you think you are? That critical voice is inside of all of our heads. The level of self-mastery, though, it takes is to start listening to the critic, but then start deciding more consciously what to do with it. Do you want to listen to that voice or not? Do you want to listen to it and maybe it actually has something useful to say to you? Maybe you aren't ready yet. Maybe you do need to do some more preparation. Maybe you do need to spend some more time getting ready for your next meeting and being more prepared. But a lot of times it's just a negative voice saying you can't. And we have to be able to discern that and be able to set that opinion aside, because it's just an opinion. Be able to set it aside and say, no, thanks anyway for that negative thought, critic. But I'm going to do this anyway. I'm going to move forward because I know that if I commit to it, I'll figure it out. It may not be perfect, but I'm going to try this because, again, any of us can reach that leadership position. It starts with believe, like you said before, it's the Ted Lasso moment, right? We all have to create the belief first.
Loving Ted Lasso here. It's yes, it's really, really popular here in the UK. For anyone who hasn't seen it, definite recommendation. Very, very, very good. Don't know what you call it, drama, sitcom, I don't know, series anyway. Love it. Oh, you've put me off what I was going to say then, talking about Ted Lasso. Got all excited about that. Yeah, it's about the belief. Oh, that was it. The choices that we make, and that, as you called it, the inner critic. You know, I often think about the critic and the guru sitting on my shoulder. You know, one's, you know, almost the devil and angel, whatever people want to call it for themselves. But for me, the critic and the guru, and that, you know, let your guru shout louder. It's okay to acknowledge that the critic has spoken to you and said, no, you can't do that. You're not capable of that. Thank you, but I think I am. So acknowledging it and then moving to the inner guru. What's that saying to you? Imagine what's possible if you just allowed yourself to listen to that whisper, because the more you listen, the more it's going to become a lovely, loud voice that enables you to start doing what you really want to do and what you didn't believe was possible however long ago you were listening to the critic every day. I mean, it's amazing what we can do for ourselves by making some different choices and yeah, just believing. Oh, I feel all warm and fuzzy now, Tom, after having that conversation. But you know, it's really lovely to be able to acknowledge that these things go on, because, you know, the struggle is real for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We, you know, imposter syndrome is pretty well understood, especially in the circles that we travel in, and probably a lot of your listeners are familiar with this idea of the imposter syndrome, that we all have some level of imposter inside of us. And really famous people like the CEO, the former CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, to famous athletes, to, you know, even Albert Einstein called himself the involuntary swindler. You know, and we found in our work over, you know, my business partner's been at this for a while, for 30 plus years, and he's worked from Alaska to the States, all the way over to Europe. And one consistent piece is this, that all of us have it inside of us, and probably 90% of CEOs are willing to admit it. And the other 10% are probably just clueless, or they've got so much fear that they're unwilling to even consider the fact that they may have some imposter syndrome going on. And so it's just a reality for most of us, unless there's something clinically wrong with us, then we all have that level of critic inside of us. And so it's not a matter of getting rid of it. You're never gonna remove it from your life, but what you can get better at is figuring out how to get it out of the driver's seat, you know, and get it in the back seat. And if you're lucky, maybe in the trunk for a while, but she'll eventually find their way back into the driver's seat on days. And that's when you just got to go back to work on, you know, empowering that positive voice in your head, whether you call it the guru or the executive, or, you know, maybe it's a parental figure, but listening to that voice and setting aside the negative one.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, allowing it to shout louder, giving it more power, and taking the power out of the critic is super helpful. And we do get that choice, which is lovely. And for any of our non-US listeners, trunk is boot in the UK.
We got to translate across this book we're writing, by the way. The gentleman that was helping us write it is based in London, England, also. Okay. And so he kept writing things, you know, in the book for us, and we had to say, well, we don't say pitch, we say field for soccer, or for football, and so it's just funny. Even the simple things like a soccer field or a football pitch, you know, you've got to be thoughtful about who's my audience here, who am I talking to.
Exactly. So we are expecting then a special version just for us in England. But there's we're lucky these days, aren't we? Because many of us that work globally, and you can always look it up on Google. But for most of us, I always smile at differences in the words that we use. And I've got some fantastic US friends I've had for many years, and we've always had a good laugh over differences in the words that we choose. And they're like, "What are you talking about, Paula?" Like, that thing. So it has caused much amusement over time. Well, look, gosh, Tom, we've talked about an awful lot today already, but I'm conscious that we've got you for another 2 episodes. So what I'm going to do is say that let's draw to a close for today. But I'm really excited ahead of next week that we're going to be taking a look at your take on game and leadership. So for now, thank you so much for today's episode. It's been really interesting, and I know the listeners will get lots from it, and we'll see you next week.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
No problem. Take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Today, we listen to the leadership journey of our guest and how they got to be where they are today. Now, in the chats, we talked about all sorts of different things, and there are lots of bits and pieces in there that are going to mean something different to each and every one of you. You'll all have your own unique takeaways, so I encourage you to do a bit of reflection now and see what this might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and I look forward to seeing you on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders, next week. Bye for now.